Hi everybody, Colin from the Bike Dads, and this video we are going to be looking at the 3 best value 24-inch full suspension bikes, and I'll give you one honorable mention as well. So if you stay with me, I will take you through each of the bikes. I'll put timestamps below if you want to jump right to the bikes. But first, I'd like to just take you through why these are such great value. If you haven't already, please subscribe and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any more of this content. It helps us know you like what you're watching. So the 24-inch full suspension category, things get really fun at this age. This is around 7 to 8 years old. That's when you can start putting them on a 24-inch full suspension bike. Get yourself a tow rope, perhaps get into the bike park. These bikes open up a world of possibilities for the young kids. First, just a quick shout out to our sponsor of today's video. It's Towie, the original tow bungee for kids. These ropes are fantastic for kids, especially when we're talking about full suspension mountain bikes. You just simply strap them up, tow them up, and you get lots and lots of descending time. We use them, we love them, they're great. So the main criteria for today's list is they have to be under $2,000. I like this, I think you'll like that, as many of these bikes in the 24-inch category are well above that. Other than that, they're going to need to have hydraulic disc brakes. You're going to have front and rear suspension. We won't be nitpicky about how much travel because they all fall in relatively the same amount, 10 to 20 mils. Now, despite being the value builds in this category, these bikes offer a lot. 2 out of the 3 bikes offer a dropper post if that's what you're after. All 3 bikes offer suspension, both front and rear, that's specifically tuned for younger and lighter weight riders. Now on the subject of suspension, both the fork and the rear suspension, you have to have realistic expectations. The kids are really lightweight and you're running really low air pressures in the fork and sometimes usually in the rear shock as well. So you're not going to get the performance like an adult. And not until they get, into that 100-pound range are they really going to get traction from the fork. Tire pressure is more a consideration for traction. The fork and the rear suspension is going to be good for big hits, so if they're jumping or dropping off ledges, things like this. All 3 of these bikes spec an HD driver, and what that is on the cassette, this is an HD driver here. So this allows to take cassettes that are not necessarily the high-end cassettes that you see from both Shimano and SRAM. You'll be able to use some of the cheaper offerings if you're ever going to upgrade or you're going to need to replace some of the drivetrain parts. We're talking about 10 and 11 speed offerings that I particularly like because a lot of the times the cassette's lighter, it's less complexity for the kids, they don't need all that range. First up on the list is the Polygon D24X at $1,699 US. It's the least expensive on the list, but it offers incredible value. It comes in at about 30 pounds with the dropper post, and it fits around 127 centimeters to 150 centimeters child. It offers X-Fusion 120 millimeter rear suspension, as well as an X-Fusion 120 millimeter fork. As mentioned, the fork and the rear shock have a specific tune for lightweight riders, and this shows when the kids ride it. The front fork actually is a 26-inch wheel fork, so you could actually mullet this bike. In the rear, it would be tricky to fit in a 26-inch tire. You'd probably be okay with about 2.2 inches wide. The angles of the bike are great. It has a 66-degree head tube angle, so it's not too floppy, it's slow speeds. The reach of this bike is about 350 millimeters. This is great because you can really squish on really small kids on this bike. Incredibly, this bike offers tubeless ready rims as well as tires. It uses the flow snaps, and you know what? You could lighten the bike up a bit as well by taking that dropper post out, maybe changing the tires to something a little lighter weight. And it cannot be stressed enough. Crank length matters for kids, and this bike comes with the perfect length, 140 millimeter cranks on a 24-inch full suspension bike. And with an 11 to 46 tooth cassette, there's plenty of range as well as a big sprocket in the back to get the kids up those hills with ease. You don't need to have a 51 tooth rear sprocket in the back for kids. The gearing isn't the same as adults because you have to take into consideration the smaller wheels. Next on the list is the fantastic YT Jeffsy Primus 24-inch full suspension bike. No dropper on this one, but you could always put one on if you wanted. The bike comes in at 28 pounds and it costs $1,999 US. Suggested fit range from YT on this, 135 centimeter height for the child, minimum, 150 maximum. So this fits a bit bigger than the Polygon, probably because it has that 370 millimeter reach compared to the 350 of the Polygon, so keep that in mind. Now this charger of a bike offers 130 millimeters of front suspension and 130 of rear suspension. Both come from Manitou, so we have a Manitou Machete up front and we have a Manitou rear shock as well. Again, like the X Fusion stuff on the Polygon, this is specifically tuned for lightweight riders, so it's trying to get the most out of the suspension for your child. It has 395 millimeter chain stays and it has a head angle of 65.5 to 66 degrees. It actually has a geometry chip which you can adjust the angles a tiny bit. As mentioned, no dropper on this bike, and that's okay with us because at the 24-inch stage, and if you're really squishing on a small child, you're probably not going to be wanting to use a dropper for complexity reasons. The length may be not right, and they might not be able to actuate the dropper because they're not heavy enough. So this is an 11 to 42 tooth rear cassette. And you know what? That's enough. It might not be the 46 tooth of the Polygon, but like I mentioned earlier, the wheel size gives consideration for the proper gearing. It's not like a 29-inch adult bike, so try to wrap your head around that. Now, the one thing I'd love to see changed on this bike is to swap out the 155 millimeter cranks for something in the 140 range. It's just too long on a 24. Come on, YT, I know you can do it next year. Swap those cranks out. But you know what? This bike is priced so fair that I would happily go out and purchase a pair of 140 millimeter lightweight cranks and put it on this bike. And the tire and wheel set are fantastic. It uses Maxxis Minions tubeless ready tires, and the rims are tubeless ready. They're Sunringley Duroc 30 millimeter rims. Fantastic. Next on the list is the Scott Ransom 400. Now this bike was a phenomenal deal last year. It was $16.99. It's crept up to $1,999. It's 30 pounds. It does come with a synchronous dropper, an 80 millimeter dropper, but like we mentioned earlier, you might need to take that out. Recommended heights for this bike is 130 centimeter minimum, and it'll go all the way up to 145 centimeter child. Like the Polygon, the Ransom uses X Fusion suspension, both front and rear. It's 140 millimeter fork and 130 millimeter rear suspension. Now they fit even smaller cranks than 140. There are 127 millimeter cranks. Now this is okay. We'd rather go shorter than longer for sure. And you know what? The smaller cranks allow you to fit even smaller kids on comfortably. So this uses the fantastic 11-speed Dior 11 to 51 tooth cassette. But you know, that might be a little overboard. I don't think they need that 51 tooth rear cog. They could have did just fine with a 42 to 46 tooth rear cog and save some weight. So this has a reach of 367 millimeters, so almost that of the YT. The chainstays are a bit longer, they're 425 millimeters, so it'll be a really stable bike. And the head angle is around 65.7 degrees, so right in line with what we see on both the Polygon and the YT. So the Scott does not offer tubeless ready tires and rims. You'd probably have to struggle a bit to make them tubeless. You could probably do it, but definitely the Polygon and the YT win out when it comes to tires and tubeless rims. And we'll give one honorable mention, and that goes to the Marin Riftzone 24. So this bike comes in at $1,899 US. The reason it's an honorable mention is that I actually prefer this bike in the 26-inch configuration. It's just a bit longer of a reach. It's 380 millimeters. So the bike, it's really tough to fit on the little kids. And the spec isn't quite as good as what we see on the other three bikes. So there you have it, the best value-oriented 24-inch full suspension bikes for kids. I feel that these three bikes offer incredible value. They offer more than the bikes that are priced almost $600–700 more in some circumstances. These bikes are gonna allow you and your kiddo to get out there, hit the trails, hit the bike park, and have a blast. And you're going to do it for the best price you can. So for more information on 24-inch full suspension bikes, including the more higher priced and premium bikes, visit www.thebikedads.com, and we'll see you on the trails.